Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the American Scouser TV Fantasy Premier League Show. I am your host, Gally, and I am going to be holding down the fort by myself for a few minutes here until the Polish Prince finds his way home from work. Yes, that prince is forced to work every once in a while, even in the weeks that he is leading up to his fantasy domination, as you will see when we show our scores later in comparison to how I am doing. So we'll get into that. It's been a long period of time. It's always tough for me coming out of the international break. The games come back, and then I feel like the matches come even quicker. So the fantasy moves and the different kind of strategies and items that we're trying to think about doing sometimes are even harder to actually line up and get going. So without further ado, let's take a look here at our current overall standings. Always really a big surprise here when we see one of our own on the leaderboard. Paul Bickler rolling in, his unnecessary pet drama coming in at sixth place. He was as high as second during this match week and dropped down to sixth place, but a really respectable 82, 593 points overall puts him just over the top 100,000 in the world. So 107,000 out of 11 million, not too bad for Mr. Bickler. But our leader at this point, Cade Nicholson, unused substitute. And Cade, if you are listening or anyone listening knows Cade, please invite Cade on. We would love to have you as a guest because we could use some pointers, seeing that Cade is sitting at just 3,707th in the world, which is just amazing. And to be leading our group at that, a good 23-point lead. So it's going to be interesting to see how Cade can keep this up. Hasn't used any of their wild cards, has not used anything there. I thought another cool point was they were 124th in the United States, and that puts them 812th in the world for Liverpool, which is pretty cool, seeing that there's 11 million people playing this game. They're 3,700th overall in the world, and that only puts them in the top 800 for all Liverpool supporters. So it shows the reach and how many Liverpool supporters are playing this game currently. Before we start looking at the team of the week last week, I'd like to remind everyone we do this program, like all of our programs, on a volunteer basis. If you would like to get involved or contribute in any way, please send us a message. Also, if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube or on Facebook, please give it a like, share, bring a friend, maybe even go out and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. All of your feedback goes a long way in us shaping up the programming that we put forth here on American Scouser TV. So if we look at last week's team of the week, we really had kind of a mixture of some of our big players that we've been expecting to see, like Salah and Ollie Watkins, even Trippier, obviously three of the highest scoring players in the game. And Mbeumo has been a great differential and a player in that $6 million range that's been a starter for many. Romero has quietly been one of the highest scoring defensive players due to a few early goals. And of course, when Liverpool keeps a clean sheet, it normally has everything to do with Alisson Becker and his contributions in net. There were a few surprises on here, though. Obviously, Mudryk with the goal and an assist, whether that was a goal or a cross that David Raya couldn't keep out. Douglas Luiz with 2 more goals at home for Villa. And, of course, Jacob Murphy's player of the week score-wise with 17 overall points. I see lots of people chase these. Every week there'll be a ton of people transferring in Chris Wood or a ton of people bringing in Diego Dalot. I always caution people. I think the knee-jerk reactions on 1 week scores and punts is always a little bit difficult because really what we need to do is make sound decisions. And I've always said if you're making a transfer, it should be for 2 to 3 weeks unless the plan is to bring in a person for 1 week because you want a specific player to replace your current guy, but that isn't for another 2 or 3 weeks down the line. So you're going to already build in those transfers. The transfers are really key in this game because it's what allows you to change your overall landscape and kind of how you're attacking points week to week by also strengthening your benches. And I think that is starting to get lost in this season because the template has made it so easy to follow suit without really needing differentials and still seeing green arrows. But I think we're starting to see that with some of these high weeks. This was a week where you needed almost 80 points to actually, I think it was 81 points for an actual safety score. So by a safety score, we're basically saying that in order for you to see a green arrow, you need to get a minimum of this. And 81 points is a lot of points for a safety score. So speaking of safety.
Speaking of green arrows.
Speaking of green arrows, he has had himself a couple good weeks. I don't know if you heard earlier. I actually gave you some kudos and credit, but
I just logged on, so I need you to repeat that so I could hear it.
We won't have any more of it. There'll be no more of it. I'm pretty sure also the viewership just dropped considerably as you joined. Just kidding. Glad to have you, my friend. Just got through talking about, we gave the league update on our league. The leader right now is just coming in at 3,700 in the world, which is pretty cool. And a good 23-point lead in our league, which is impressive. I made the comment that it's always a shock when we see one of our names on the screen. So it's nice to see Paul Bickler there for now in sixth place, just outside top 100,000. Was as high, I think, midday Sunday or morning Sunday. I think he was 32,000 in the world and second in the league, but still a respectable finish with a slight green arrow with his 82. But just a crazy week. But as we kind of look at this and move ourselves forward, I thought we would take a look here at the transfers in. Start like we always do. Outside of the Douglas Luiz hysteria and Simicast's price tag, surprised on Ali Watkins, Salah, and Saka, or you think this is just a mixture of, fixtures and fear?
I definitely expected to see at least one Villa name in there, and I expected to see Costas because with Robertson being out for as long as he is, there is no one else that Klopp's going to put back there for now, at least. So having Tsimikas is a safe bet because given the fixtures the Liverpool will have too, there's a couple cleans in there. And especially as we saw this past week, there's definitely opportunity for points, just a matter of where they will come from. I think one of the tough things with Liverpool in general, if you're worried about where the points are going to come from up front, then having someone like Tsimikas or Trent is a safe bet because at least you'll get some sort of points from that back four because that's going to be the back four. They're going to be two of the back four at least for the next 2 months. So other than that, everything is in line with what I'd expect. I mean, Douglas Luiz is just having a hell of a season, honestly. I don't think anyone expected it. I don't think he himself expected it, which, it's just a testament to how well Villa's been playing, especially at home. They're like another monster at home, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they play in front of a huge stadium, and when they're up for it, their supporters are as good as any in the country, which is, it's fun to see. It's good for them. I don't know how long Douglas Luiz carries out. I think if I were still, wild carding into a side or making transfers, I think I'd still be looking at, Diaby and Watkins and Cash and, even Emi Martinez before I was actually looking at Douglas Luiz. But I understand why people are taking a punt, especially the ones who are just the knee jerk. They see a 15-point score and a guy under 6 million, and they're like, I'm just going to go get that guy, before I see him score 2 more goals. But they may be the last 2 goals he scores in England, But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Watkins and Salah obviously being brought in at a monumental clip makes a lot of sense. I think some of it is Salah's in red hot form and keeps scoring, and Liverpool's fixtures are about to really turn nice. is some of the amount of the 500,000 people that are able to bring in Watkins that and that many people bringing in Salah, is that there are that many people making double moves off of Holland and freeing up funds?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I know I myself went off of Holland 2 weeks ago. I'm waiting for that to bite me in the ass. And it since I dropped him though, it's been okay. I've been treading above water. But it is gonna all come collapse at some point. But yeah, I think there's a good percentage. I wish that there probably is some app or some website somewhere that could tell us the breakdown of player X or of manager X dropping player A and grabbing in player B. I'm sure that's out there somewhere, and I would be curious to see. I would be, I mean, if the percentage is anywhere from 25 to 40% of those who are picking up Salah also dropped Holland, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I have this feeling that when we look at the next graphic that shows us the players in, players out, and we recognize, I think you're going to see an easy trend that might make sense. And it's the two players on the screen that aren't really injured and ones that along with Holland. And I think it makes a lot of sense that tons of guys and women, men and women playing this game, dropped Holland, went to Watkins, and then moved off one of Rashford or Fernandez and found their way up to Mo. It's about the same amount of money in each direction. And obviously, at this point, it would be like a really positive net gain. Botman, obviously, word got out. The injury's worse than they thought, and he's going to be out for a while. And of course, Estupiñán has a long-term injury. So I just think this is folks who are maybe checking back into the game and just hadn't been paying attention. Any surprises here between Rashford, Holland, and Fernandez, even with United's good run of fixtures? Because they're good fixtures for the next 3 or 4 for United. Outside of City this weekend.
Right, yeah, because I was going to say, because they have the City fixture, and then you've got Fulham, Luton, Everton. It's like, okay, there's some points to be had there. I think the price tag overall with what's been going on between Rashford and Fernandez has been a little tough to swallow, especially when you have, the next coming of Ronaldo in Scott McTominay coming through. Then there's worries that you're not going to get equal value. And this is what the game is all about, essentially, is how much – what can you justify between points and value? And I know if we were sitting here, if last October you would tell me that next year this time we would be talking about 230,000 people dropping Holland, and not out of injury concern, but just in general, I would think that you're absolutely crazy. But we've gotten to a point where his price tag has just not been justifiable with his output, especially when you have someone like Alvarez right next to him who's producing just as much for nearly half the price, it seems. It's hard to swallow because that's a lot of money you can invest elsewhere. So yeah, I think it's interesting. It's fun because the game is shifting again, and we're not stuck doing the whole auto cap like we did last year or when Mo had those years. So it's really offering up, I think, a little bit more strategy in terms of how do you build out the rest of your team if you don't have Holland.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And I think, when we talk about how you build your teams and where you put your money, it does come down to your overall value on specific positions and areas and players, right?
Right.
But I think the captaincy picks, and we've always said this before, if you really look at teams that do really well, they're the ones that they hit on their captains, the majority of the time. It's the highest point or the highest of their premium players, obviously. So if you have Son, Mo, and Holland, if you're one of those people that have built a team around that, you need to make sure that the armband's probably going to be on one of those 3 players every week. You need to make sure you pick the right one. And if this week you do that and you pick any one of the 3, you're okay because you have 8, 11, and 16, and you're good with any of those 3. It's the weeks where you put the armband on, Son against Luton, and they win 1-0 scored by a defender on a corner kick. And, Mo scores 13, and you're like, that's a huge 23-point swing.
Right.
And that ultimately is how this game is won and lost. It's those decisions 10 times of the year that lead to 150 points. sometimes that is the difference between 1.2 million and top 10,000. It's just it's such small margins, and that's why I think it's so important. And you talked about the auto captain, so you know we look at this week, and I think this is one of those weeks where you'd probably argue it might be the most open. There was a week or so ago, there was a really open captaincy week. And I think that was the week where, you know, maybe City was playing Brighton, so you weren't exactly sure if you could just go auto captain Holland. Liverpool had a moderate fixture. Tottenham had Luton. This is even more wide open for me. So obviously, this chart shows percentage of ownership, overall predicted points, and then who the opponent is, home or away. They have Salah top of the board, with Saka second, Holland, Jota, which is asinine.
It's a huge differential, though, if you get it right.
Would be a monster differential, but I'm not even positive he's going to start. And then Watkins, Martinelli, some guy named Diaz with his name spelled incorrectly.
Yeah, I don't know. That was weird.
Son, Havertz. It probably is going to end up on a T-shirt somewhere in San Diego, and Gabriel. But where do you lie outside of the crazy Jota, which I know you would never have on your fantasy team, let alone captain? Surprised you even allow him on our team.
I'm not that much of a hater, I think.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe. No, I may have.
Where do you go on this board? Like, obviously, I know you're going to captain Salah because you have him on your side and you don't have Holland.
Correct.
But, like, if you weren't captaining Salah this week, would you even consider anyone but Watkins at home against Luton? I think it's blasphemous that he's not second on this list. And I think it's crazy that he doesn't have the highest projected score, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I would have expected to see either Salah Watkins 1-2 or vice versa, Watkins Salah 1-2. Given the fixture, given the run of form, it's really weird to see him that low on this list. Again, I know that I send these over. It says there's more at checkthechance.com. I've never actually looked into how they calculate it. So it might be part of, really bad host material showing that I don't really double check the sources to see how they get the points. But it does beg the question of what they are looking at, because I don't know if it's something to do with the expected minutes, if that has anything to do with form over the last couple weeks, because I think, like you're saying, I don't feel comfortable captaining anyone besides Watkins or Salah on this list. And that's just maybe Holland, just because if you have him, again, that's a big price tag to pay to not throw your armband on him. That goes back to things that we've said many, many weeks on the show, is if you're going to have guys that cost that much, if you're not captaining them, there's no reason to have them on your team. Unless you have a good option that week. So this might be one of those weird weeks where you kind of just close your eyes, and if you do have Holland, you maybe you take the chance and go for it and hope that enough people are going on Mo and Watkins where Holland cap becomes sort of a weird differential in a way. But other than that, yeah, those are I can't picture myself captaining anyone but Watkins or Salah this week, and it's gonna be Mo. I'm not gonna even. Actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't know. It might be Watkins. I did it last week, so I'll do it again.
So Salah makes the most sense to me, obviously looking at this list. And I don't love Holland in the big games, even though he's had good success against United. United had a big win midweek in the Champions League, and I do think that you build off stuff like that, especially when you're playing at home. And I hate to say it, like, the type of player you want playing against Holland is a big old oaf of a refrigerator like Harry Maguire, like bodying him around and lumbering on him and leaning on him and kicking him in the back of the legs. And, I got to give the guy credit. Harry Maguire's done a nice job of keeping his mouth shut and his head down and just kind of fighting for minutes. And, he started over Rafael Varane last week in the league, not because he had to, because I think he won this jersey. And then he played well midweek. He scores the winner. I think he goes out there with a purpose, and I think that's a cagey little match. Like, I think City will win, but I don't know that it will be like some kind of blitz. It could be a Rodri goal and break their hearts late. It could be a Hoyland early goal and then a Doku goal and then an Alvarez goal. Like I could see Haaland having a rough day, so I would not be captaining Haaland. He's still in my side. We'll look at our sides in a little bit. I don't understand the Saka play, especially with the fact that he's had limited minutes recently. He came off again midweek in Europe. So it seems like he's still carrying something. Blows my mind how bad they feel Sheffield United is if they'll actually put Havertz and a defender on the top captaincy picks of the top 10. It just lets you know, Sheffield United, that in 2 seasons you'll probably be in League One. So trips to Wrexham aren't that bad. Don't worry. You'll both find each other in the middle. I'd be worried if any person out there was actually watching Sheffield United playing fantasy. Because if you are, you might as well see your season just go down the tank. But I think I'm going solid myself. We'll see our sides. You'll see how I got there. I think Martinelli is a decent differential here if you were going to attack Sheffield for his ownership level and the fact that I still think he's the best overall attacking option in the Arsenal side, even though he's not on penalties or set pieces, yet still seems to outscore everyone else. I don't love the folks that are saying like Son is a differential captain this week. I know Crystal Palace just shipped 4. But they can at any moment show up and play like Roy ball and just be completely defensive and stymie. And I could see, Tottenham eking out a 1-0 victory. So oftentimes when we do this show, we ask our contributors to send in their teams, send in your picks, give us ideas or ask questions. That is still out there and we are open to it at all times. So one of our contributors sent in their side, and this is a before and after of our own Harry McMullen, who has done a great number of new articles and has started a tactical video series with his own programming, the Tactical Board, that he did with his first installment this week. It was outstanding. If you didn't see it, I recommend highly checking it out either on any of our Facebook pages, but of course directly at our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search American Scouser. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you don't see that option already checked. So I know you already chimed in with a little bit of your opinion here. Harry clearly made quite a little bit of surgery here. Looks like he only kept 5 players. Let's start with basically the keepers to defense. We'll start there. What are your thoughts on moving off of Turner and Onana and settling on the pair of Turner and Ariel?
Well, I have to say that I like it because that's how my team is set up. So if I say I don't like it, it's going to look really bad on me. I think it's a pretty standard chalk template kind of double goalkeeper move right now. You have 2 guys who will start every match while they're fit and both under 4.2. I know that they're not going to be getting clean sheets every week, but it's tough to spend an extra 1 to 1.5 million sometimes on a keeper just on the off chance to get 4 extra points. So for me, I like only spending the 8.2 back there, and I think as the fixtures come in, just being able to rotate between the two, you'll find a fixture that you like more than the other, and then you'll just go with it. That's sort of how most people will play keepers. That's one of those, like we've said time and time again, set it and forget it. You want to just have 2 guys back there that can play at any time and that are serviceable enough, and they're not costing you a ton of money. So I think overall, I like the setup there.
So he jumped off of, he had a double Villa back line, Pau Torres and Matty Cash, the greatest Polish player in the world today, playing in England with English roots, born in England, but Polish. And of course, Tottenham's Udogie as his starters. And then he also had injured Botman and of course, Tinnick from Brentford. He comes out of that with Zinchenko, Cash, Mitchell, Pinnock, and Simicast. How are you with the overall allocation here at the back, especially seeing that there's some money in the bank and maybe some points left on the board? Question mark?
Yeah, I feel like if you're going the Arsenal route, especially if you're looking at someone like Zinchenko and you have the 1.2, if I was in his position, I would just cough up the extra 0.6, 0.7 it is and go up to Ben White. And then I do like the Costas pick overall. I think 4.5 for a starting Liverpool defender who has some set pieces. I think that's a great value there.
Mm-hmm.
Mitchell for me is a little weird. Not that Crystal Palace isn't good defensively. I mean, Joachim Anderson, I think, is third overall in total defenders this year so far. I just don't know if I feel like for me, and this is going back to a comment I said on Discord, this is missing a Spurs player. And whether it's in the midfield or defense, I think he could have gone with someone like Romero or Van de Ven back there and still gotten the same amount of value. Romero is just about 0.4 more. Van de Ven's about, I think, 0.1 more. So they're in the same realm. And I think that they have a much better chance at giving you more defensive and offensive returns than just Tyreek Mitchell.
Yeah, I think on the defensive side, I really like Matty Cash. Obviously, I have him in my side, and Villa's fixtures are just money. I agree when it comes to Simicast. You can't pass up, especially if you're wild carding. You might as well be looking. As far as Zinchenko goes, like the pick, don't love it. But the Mitchell one is a question mark, and I just think you could do better with Pinnock, Mitchell, Zinchenko, just allocating whatever that is, 13.9 million. I think
I will say though, for that little amount of money, it's not a bad back line. If you're gonna spend as little as you can on that back five, I like it. It's just I think, especially like you said, if you have money in the bank and there are teammates of these guys that could be a little bit better value even, then that would make a little bit more sense. But yeah,
Yeah, I just think you can make slight improvements up or even just like 1-2 players out, and I think it would be a little bit more of a solid back end. As far as the midfield goes, I completely understand it. It's built around Mo and Saka, which makes sense. I like the Cole Palmer pickup. Gordon's numbers are absolutely phenomenal. And today, if anyone watching today knows that pick just got a lot better as Jacob Murphy went down, walked off the pitch with basically the exact same Andy Robertson makeshift sling. He clearly dislocated his shoulder. It was clear as day as soon as the cameras went on his face. And Isak's out as well, which anyone out there looking for a striker, obviously Kalen Wilson's value just skyrocketed overnight. Matoma's fixtures change. So, you look at that at 6.5. Could you maybe go in Buemo? Could you maybe look at another player there? I think there might have been alternate options.
Diaby, perhaps.
Diaby is another good shout, even though his goals have dried up from the moment that I put him on my goddamn team.
Same here.
But this is where I look at this side, and I do kind of agree with you where, Harry's clearly made a decision to go top heavy. I mean, he ultimately has the 3 best informed strikers in the game and players that you would want on your side here. And he's going to start them every week. Where I struggle with building a team this way with so little spent at the back is you can't start all these players every week. And I think there's an awful lot of weeks you're going to want Palmer, Matoma, or Gordon playing. And you're never going to want to sit one of those strikers. And that's always hard for me. So I always try to have something built in where I can kind of have like a built-in buffer of which players are going to start and which players I'm comfortable rotating in or having rotated in. So I think if it were me, I would have reallocated a little bit more money. I would have spent at least 0.7 of that 1.2, probably left $500,000 in the buffer. I don't know if I would have gone as heavy top front line, but if I was going with that front three, I definitely would have probably had like one of the really lower, either like a $4 million defender for like Mitchell, who like I can't imagine Mitchell getting a start at any point with this setup right here.
Right. Because he's only going to play 3 of them.
So if you're never gonna start a player, why not make him $4 million?
Right.
Make him a Burnley or a Luton defender. I mean, hell, go with Charlie Taylor and have it be 3.9 and just save your extra 0.1. That
Well,
0.6.
Yeah,
that
and that
0.6. Now you're up to 1.8. You can then make that move to even move off of, say, Zinchenko, and you can take Zinchenko to Ben White or Zinchenko to Gabriel. You could then take, there's so many different things you can do. And I think to your point, what this team is missing is honestly for me upgrading Matoma to Madison. Because I think if you did Matoma to Madison, this is a really, really competitive team for like 4 to 6 weeks with like game-changing players.
Yeah.
But it's such a huge improvement over what we see to the left of the screen. So all in all, I commend you, Harry. You got good differentials in there. I couldn't even imagine if you didn't pick up Holland, what you would have done with all that money. And I'm a little envious because I keep wondering what it's going to be like to not have Holland in my side. And then when I do it, he's going to bring in 45 points.
You know what? And so be it if he does. I will be honest with you. The last 2 weeks not having Holland, it has actually felt so fun. And I don't know. It's weird. I just don't care. It feels so good to say that.
It feels good to watch City and not want to, and not feel dirty if he scores and actually be happy when he doesn't. That's the part that feels really good.
Yeah.
Don't lie.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So let's get to our sides. And, normally we look at your team first, but you're 20 points ahead of me in about 400,000 places. So I figured we should look at mine. Yeah, it was a tough week. Didn't feel like a tough week when I get, 8, 9, 7, 14, 10, 6, 7. Felt like a pretty good week.
Usually would be a really good week.
Felt like a good week. Obviously wasn't with the overall scores. Classic Galley fashion. I literally flopped Bowen and Foden back and forth from the first position on the bench about 6 times. And then settled on playing Foden, claiming it would be his last day on my side. Just brutal. Been an absolute train wreck and a failure for me has Phil Foden. The Bowen goal was such a kick in the pants because not only did it, put 8 points on my bench, it took away the clean sheet from Cash and Diaby. Just really frustrating. Was happy that Bruno was able to at least rebound and give me some points. And at least my defense chimed in. I did make 2 moves. I broke my own rule, and I'm happy that I did. You know me, I normally advocate you don't make transfers till the night before, if not the day of, the deadline, depending on how early and what time it is. I actually made my first transfer, I think Saturday or Sunday, right after the matches, before Monday's match even occurred, and then made my second one right after that. And if I hadn't, the 2 price changes that occurred wouldn't have allowed me to make the move. So there's sometimes jumping in works and sometimes it doesn't. I did make a double move. I moved out Phil Foden and I moved out Son, which was painful. But that move allowed me to actually reallocate funds and bring in Cole Palmer and shift to Mo. And, it was a little bit of that FOMO, seeing my wife have Salah not only on her side, but captained, even though she had Holland. So that was a good call by her. Made a big move, moved well ahead of me with that move, of course, because that's how it works in my house. But I just had to do it. I felt like the fixtures are coming. Son's been good, but I think there's other goals in that Tottenham side, and the more they play Ange's game, I think the more it's starting to show that everyone's scoring and contributing, even though he's still the top player. So I like Palmer. What I really like about him, obviously, is the minutes he's getting. I like that he's on penalties. He looked really good in the false nine. He could have scored at least one more, if not two. And like, I questioned why he left City to go to Chelsea, where I didn't think he'd play. And then really quickly, you could see that he was going to get an opportunity, and you can almost tell that like Pochettino has picked him as his guy, to like help succeed. And for me, that's enough at 4.9. It just doesn't. It seems like a no-brainer. And I had to get to Mo, and I just wasn't ready to move off Holland yet. I do think it's coming for me, because I really do want to get back, I think, to having Son, even Saka in this side. And to do that, I think if I took Holland down to Watkins and took that, what is it, 6 million, 4.5 million, 5.5 million in between, now I can upgrade Fernandez to Son, and, one of my other mids, maybe even Bowen eventually. But I mean, how do you move off Bowen at this point? He arguably could be the best player at this point, like the hottest player in the game. And he's got Everton coming next week. My biggest problem next week is with this, I don't want to sit anyone next week. And I'm not even kidding. At one point, I actually thought about ripping it and hitting the bench boost this week, even though there's no double. But because at some point you just have to look at a match week where you're like, I don't want to sit Bruno Fernandes. And right now I'm literally between Palmer against Brentford at home or Bruno Fernandes, and don't really want to sit either. I don't want to sit Schär against Wolves. I'm obviously playing Trippier. I'm playing Diaby against Luton. I'm playing Cash against Luton. Like, I'm playing Areola against Everton. It's really one of those weeks where, like, I want to play every single guy that I have. So it's a really interesting one for me. I don't know. What would you say if you were looking at that? Where are you?
Man, I don't feel as passionately about Bruno this week as you do. So I don't know. I think there's, as you know, Bickler is chiming in here in the comments.
Well, Paul jumped in with, "Sup, fellas? Any advice for all these chip things I have left? Weird game." Yeah, hugs and kisses. Paul obviously is just chiming in because, well, I'd take victory laps too if I was doing as well as him. But I will remind him we are 10 weeks of a 38-week marathon. So what I would say you do with that chip is use it all you want.
Save it for the end when you're back to trying to catch up to us.
Oh, I wasn't going there. Not with my position. Knowing how I'm playing.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I would hate to be in your position, to be honest, because you do have some tough choices to make. I think ultimately it's going to come down to, you will know before the deadline which way you feel most passionately, and no matter which direction you go, it's going to be the right direction because that's how you felt at the moment. And I think that's a big thing to let people know watching this, is that in the moment, if you feel a certain way, it's okay if it doesn't work out, because we can't predict what's going to happen anyway. You might make the right decision. You might go up 15 points, or you might leave 15 points on your bench. But at the time, it was the right thing to do. So I think you'll be fine. I would just sit Bruno personally. But you do your thing. I might also just be trying to sabotage you, so I continue my lead.
That is completely fair. I do have Bruno. I just looked. I actually switched it as we were talking. I actually do have Bruno sitting now and Schär playing. I have Bruno, Morris, and Al Dakil on my bench, and then I have Leno on my bench. But in all seriousness, I have a Burnley defender against Bournemouth. I have Morris against Villa, which isn't the worst matchup. Bruno on penalties, of course, and then and against the City team that concedes goals, and then Leno playing a Hobble Brighton who have struggled and been up and down. Like that's why those are my bench players, and I look at that and say to myself, how many times have I bench boosted and got 20 points out of my bench? And I could see 20 points out of that bench.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people wait for the doubles, and I've been, victim of this. You wait for all these double game weeks, and you get a bunch of players that don't play well.
Yeah.
So
we'll slaves to the chips. We are
slaves to the chips. Should be the name of the podcast. So, talk me through your side last week and the decisions you have for this week.
Yeah, so last week I made no changes. The week before was when I ripped the wild card and brought in this team, and then I was looking at it and I thought, you know what? I don't need to make any changes. I'm happy with what it is, so I kept it. So now I had 2 free transfers, and I'm thinking, okay, well now what? I need to catch up to Paul Bickler, so I need to make the right moves to make sure that I put myself in the best position to do that. Because I never thought in the many months we've been doing this that I would literally utter the words, I have to catch up to Bickler. But here we are. And so what I ended up doing, and I haven't hit the make transfers. It's been sitting on my screen for a day. I'm planning to move from McAtee to Palmer because that makes sense. The problem is that's Palmer's $5 million now, so it's going up 0.6. I don't have anything in the bank, so I have to come down. My current situation is that I've come down from Darwin Nunez to Evan Ferguson. And I'm caught in a really interesting situation where I don't feel great about Evan Ferguson. I might do João Pedro instead. But I also don't feel great about that. But I don't have any other striker where I'm coming down from Darwin Nunez where I feel good enough about that. But I feel like I really need Cole Palmer on my team. So I'm really stuck because there's no other player, unless I go down from Diaby to Palmer and not have to worry about changing anything. But I really want Diaby for these next round of fixtures. So what do I do?
So why do you need Palmer this week? Would he start?
So, okay, I technically, so because I have 2 free transfers, if I don't use one this week, I'm going to lose a transfer for the whole year, right? Like, I know it's not necessarily the best way to go about it, but if you only have so many free transfers, if I burn one, I might be kind of upset at myself in the future. So I feel like I want to bring him in so I'm not wasting a transfer, but in order for me to do that, I have to sacrifice a position.
So why not? And this is my thing. Whether or not, would you be playing Palmer this week for sure if you bring him in? Because I'm not sure I'd start him in your side right there if you show me that side. Because I think Darwin's starting on the weekend against Forest.
I was looking at doing a 3-5-2 with Cash, Trent, Trippier, as you see there, bring in Palmer, and then doing Alvarez and Watkins.
I think Darwin starts, and I think a Darwin start. I think Darwin, anyways, gives you just as much of a chance for a haul or a score as Palmer.
Yeah.
And you already have him there, and if he doesn't start or for some reason he doesn't play, you have the auto sub. I personally think if you're going to make a move this week just to save you a transfer, I'd be moving off of Lamptey, and I would be bringing in fodder that's actually healthy enough to play, and if ever needed to auto sub in, would be a Phil. Adds points to your bank, right?
Yeah.
So you don't lose your free transfer, right? You bring in points, and then next week, with your 2 free transfers, you make a double move that allows you to bring in Palmer and upgrade whatever other player at that point is a week closer to the fixtures you want to move off of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the way I would look at it, because I just feel like a double move this week. And the other thing is to your point, you don't want to lose that free transfer, but you also don't get that many opportunities to make 2 moves for free. And you make those 2 moves to bring in Palmer now, you actually do lose that. And you're settling for a striker to bring in Cole Palmer now. Where next week, you never know. one of your guys may have a price increase and you may make a little more money. One of the guys you want may have a price drop. You never know. You know what I mean? Like, so I would be nervous to do that for Ferguson. I'm trying to say, if anything, I'm advocating getting away from Lamptey. I think it's a punt on Brighton assets time for me.
I feel like they have such a good run of fixtures offensively is the only thing that is enticing, especially having either Ferguson or João Pedro. Because then you've got Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield at home, Forest away. And those are 4 really good fixtures, in my opinion.
Oh no, I agree they're good fixtures, but they are not actually putting anything out right now as a team consistently. Like, to Bickler's point, right? Mitoma is the only consistent output on that team right now. And even Mitoma has had times where he seems isolated out on the left. And to be honest, you said Ferguson. I think Ferguson has the most talent of any player on that side and might end up being the biggest star. But he's the one who looks like he doesn't actually fit what De Zerbi does. Like, and it almost is because they can't figure out, like, it's that old adage, like, he wants a runner like Welbeck and then a guy like Gomez or, João Gomes behind him, right? João Pedro behind him. When the truth is, like, Ferguson is just a point forward central striker. And I don't even know that really works. Bickler said, I'd even consider moving him out given the other options in that range. And that's where I come to, like, I can see if you want to go off Darwin and you're like, hey, I'm going to go down to, a $5 or $5.5 million striker and take that money and then go reinvest it. But to drop from McAtee to Palmer and then move up, it just doesn't for me make as much sense. So speak of the man who's was kind enough to share his sides with us tonight. Chelsea have Spurs, City, Newcastle, Brighton, and Man United in their next 6 games. Palmer might be worth waiting for until after the fixture improves. Thanks for all the help. I don't disagree with that at all, Harry. The problem is if you're going to have – every team needs to have enablers for big contracts. And to me, if you have a $4.9 million guy who's on an enabler who's on penalties and is also looks to be kind of the darling of a manager who just feels like he's getting his thing going at his new club, I have this feeling that as long as Pochettino can, he's going to be funneling everything through Sterling and Palmer and really hoping that Enzo Fernandez and, Caicedo can figure out how to balance out the midfield with Gallagher and they'll be able to rack up enough points. They look a much, much more cohesive side. And it's amazing what happens when you figure out the back, how quickly it looks good going forward. And that's kind of what I feel like is happening for Chelsea. But I don't disagree. Those are very tough fixtures. But I could see Cole Palmer getting 2 goals in that time frame. And at $4.9 million, that's just going to be a price tag that just keeps rising. If I were you, I would be more judicious with the transfers this week and not be as aggressive to get Cole Palmer in now. Even if it costs you another 0.2, like we talked about, you can do that by making the moves. I really think the Lamptey move is your move for this week, in my opinion. He didn't start fit. Like, James Milner's been starting over him. It's almost like this manager is like, you haven't recovered from those injuries and you're not my guy. So I think it's the Lamptey move for you. Save some money and make your double move next week because you don't have to worry about – you can field a really strong 11 without anything, without any worry there. So any parting final words for our viewers, for Bickler, for Harry, for everyone else that has chimed in or is watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, formerly known as X, or X, formerly known as Twitter?
No, I mean we appreciate any of you guys tuning in, and like Gally said earlier, if you ever have any questions and you want to send your teams in, we're more than happy to take a look at them. I have smashed the make transfers button, and I have only just taken out Lamptey, and
No.
Ferguson is going to score 2 goals this week, and I'm going to be sad, and that's fine, but I'll get over it because in the long run, like you said, it's a marathon, not a race, and eventually I'll catch up to Bickler, and all will be well in the world.
I think you made the right move. I'm sure it probably won't work because it was my idea, and I'll apologize for it next week. But I do think you made the right move, and I think you're right. It is, it's a long ass run, and you got to make sure you got enough stamina for the end. And I think using your transfers judiciously and using the value of your team makes the most sense. Bickler says, "No chance, eat my dust," and we all know if this was a real race, there's no chance you're winning that shit, Paul. But in this race, you might just pull it off. We will see. For everyone here on the program, we appreciate you all tuning in. As always, if you haven't already, I don't know what's wrong with you, but get over to that YouTube channel. Type in American Scouser in the search bar and smash the subscribe button, as Bickler would say. We need you to like this video, share it with friends if you think that you know someone that would enjoy or could benefit from listening to us wallow about our poor weeks of fantasy. Please bring them to the program. And as always, if you're so inclined and would like to get engaged with the good folks here at American Scouser, drop us a line on any of our social media channels through Messenger and let us know, and we'll be in touch.
I've got one last thing.
Like and subscribe. Smash that like button. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
I thought I would get through an entire program without that drop, and now realize that that is not even possible. Someone will someday probably show me where that is, and then I will wish I didn't have it. But in all seriousness, great program today. Everyone, do not forget, public service announcement. There is a
Tomorrow.
game tomorrow, people, 3 p.m., which means, and that's Eastern. We all live on Eastern time zones except for the people in Central time zone and Western time zone and the Pacific time zone and other parts of the world. But the game starts 3 p.m. Eastern, which means your deadline is 1.5 hours before. Don't forget to make your transfers, set your lineups. Don't get caught up with the argument and complaining about the game having stupid rules. You know the rules. Play the game. Enjoy the game. Who knows? You might even finish thousands of positions better than you should. All right, everyone. Have a great week, and we will be back next week for another fantasy football show.